Story 1. She came for free food once a week. And not cheap food either. We cooked medium-rare filet steaks with red wine-based sauce and varying side dishes or other really amazing meals once per week in my kitchen. And I paid for everything. I thought she came to hang out with me, but eventually, it became more and more obvious she only came for the food. It got to the point where she was glued to her phone texting other friends while I was cooking, or when we were watching a movie, she would barely look at the screen. One day, realizing what was going on, I decided to test our friendship. My car needed some repairs, and the workshop I planned to bring it to was on the way between my place and hers. I asked her if she could pick me up from the workshop after I dropped my car off, take me home, and then we could spend the day as usual, cooking something nice and watching a movie. She declined and said she felt like I was just using her to get home. Our friendship ended at that moment, and I have saved well over €100 per month on food for years. Your selfishness will not be missed, Janine. Story 2. People who only talk about themselves and do not listen to you when you speak for more than 5 seconds. After a while, you realize that it is no longer a real friendship. You are just in the same room. Story 3. I realized when I was going through some tough but very personal issues that no one had reached out to me for many months. I was deeply involved with these issues daily. It was not realistic to reach out to many people at that time, so I figured sooner or later one person from this group would eventually contact me and relay the message to the others. But since no one did, no one knew. As time went on and the issues grew, I realized the same group would not know what was happening, whether I was ill or even dead. It was an eye-opener. My family and other friends were there for me and offered their moral support. I realized who had my back and who let me drift away. After another year went by, I still had not connected with any of them. I wish all of them well, but time is precious, and I know to spend it only with those invested in me. Story 4. Ended 2 long-time friendships because they were both too messed up. Always problems and drama, always excuses. When you are 20 and have drama, it is not necessarily a red flag. When you are 50 and still having drama, the problem is you, not everyone else. I would rather have no friends than be around people who can never seem to get their act together. Story 5. My friend left a child unsupervised while in her care. The child walked onto a main road and was taken to the police. She did not notice until they arrived. Then she lied about it, and my other friend, her sister, covered for her. Both of them are unreliable. Story 6. Multiple times, they arranged plans and went places without me. I would always find out randomly, and by the time I learned, it was too late to join, or I would just see it on their social media. I blocked them and do not look back anymore. Story 7. When they pressured me to pay half the cost for a lavish birthday party for one of their husbands, I realized they wanted me to fund an Airbnb where 16 of his friends would be blackout drunk and destroying the place. They had not invited me to 2 previous friend events and ignored my own birthday. I'm usually patient, but that was the last straw. Story 8. Overall, just toxic in every way. Never respected boundaries or things told in confidence. That type of stuff was always weaponized. Treated like either a punching bag or a zoo or laboratory exhibit. Took me way too long to realize. The sad thing is, as an introvert, they were basically my whole social circle. People can be unpleasant. Story 9. The most common issue was that I was the only one putting effort into the relationship. I was the only one texting, scheduling hangouts, and providing updates. We were great, but we gradually drifted apart. The apathy was gradual, but when I realized it, the change felt as stark as night and day. It's crazy to think someone could care for you so much within a year, and then the next moment, nothing. They had already moved on, and you watched it happen slowly until it was gone. The plans we made together, the lists, memories, and nicknames, all gone. Story 10. They were bringing my grades down, and I started to notice that my other classmates and teachers became annoyed by my sense of humor, which I had adopted from them. The next year, we were placed in different classes. I began spending time with more decent and sophisticated students, while they ended up repeating the school year at least twice. Story 11. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I went out for drinks with one of my lifelong best friends. He and I had been through a lot over the years, and I would have trusted him with my life. I stepped out for a cigarette, and when I came back, she was in the bathroom, and he was sitting on the side of the booth where we had been sitting before I left. I did not think much of it and sat down. She came out and sat down, and the conversation continued as normal. It was not until we were walking home that she told me he had slid onto our side of the booth and began very aggressively hitting on her, essentially trapping her in the booth. I was furious. I completely cut him out of my life and have not spoken to him since. I do not owe him any explanation, despite what some of our mutual friends think. She wanted me to keep it between us so no one else knows what happened, only that we fell out after that night. Story 12. When she never showed up to parties or my daughter's wedding, she wouldn't come to my home, yet expected me to attend her planned events. Story 13. I would always go to their place to catch up, which is at least 45 minutes each way, and in over 10 years, they have not made one trip to my place, despite me offering to host with barbecue and dinner. I am no longer willing to tolerate that behavior. Story 14. Realized I was always the one taking the photos but never invited to be in them, not once. I felt like I was their helper rather than a friend. Story 15. I was the person who would drive 150 miles on a Sunday night to bail a friend out of jail. If he knocked on my door at midnight and needed to stay on my couch, sure thing. Needed a ride, needed to borrow $50, needed a listening ear while you talked about the same struggle you have had for the past 10 years? I was your person. Then my father died suddenly. And silence. Only one person from that group of what I thought were friends came to the funeral. That person is still my friend. The rest did not. I read recently that you are the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. I found a better group of friends. I feel like a much better person now. Story 16. When my life went downhill for a time, all except one of them chose to look the other way. Afterward, I was always there if they needed me. Goodbye. Story 17. They never reply to my messages. I have invited them to various events, and they just do not respond. I understand that people are busy and do not have to reply immediately, but this is not even a 3 to 5 business day response situation. It is just silence. Story 18. Emotional vampires who constantly had drama made it exhausting to be their friend, especially when I realized why. They were causing it. They always expected me to be there, but were never there for me. The final straw was when they spoke negatively about me to my best friend, who told me. Some of them had few or no friends, and I felt bad for them, so I took them in and realized why. It is good if you can recognize that you are the problem and change, but they never admitted fault. No thanks. Story 19. When they always choose to be a victim in every situation and do not take responsibility for the problems they created. Never an apology is given, even for small things. Story 20. They only reached out when they wanted something from me. Also, the insults were disguised as jokes. Story 21. As my life improved and I began to succeed, she took a step back. By the time I owned a house and was married, she would barely talk to me. Story 22. They fell down the Andrew Tate pipeline. They started talking about women as objects, property, literally anything but people. When that extended to my wife, who they knew well, I cut them off. 3 close 20-year friends gone in a matter of months. Story 23. When I show up for others and they do not show up for me, my fiancé and I are getting married in September. I can almost guarantee that after this wedding, we will not be associating with hardly anyone. It is bringing out the worst in people. Story 24. She was extremely controlling and toxic. I couldn't do anything without giving her notice. She would ask for money and guilt me into lending it. I knew I had to break things up when she left for a 5-week trip, and I felt so light and free. Story 25. Encouraging my husband to drink excessively and problematically, refusing to acknowledge that he had issues with alcohol, they went out of their way to convince him he was fine and that he would be better if he divorced me because I was clearly ruining his and everyone else's good time. Story 26. I just lost one of my closest friends because I found out he was abusing one of my family members for over a decade. I probably should have just turned my back on him, but I beat him up. Now I have to fight him again in court. This all happened Monday. It has been a long week. Story 27. When one of my best friends tried to kiss me while his wife and child were asleep upstairs, I no longer felt safe around him. On top of that, I had come out to him as attracted to women that night and told him I only wanted to date women. Story 28. I told myself I was going to focus on college, my studies, and personal growth. The friends I used to hang out with who only smoked marijuana, drank alcohol daily, skipped classes, and partied, became upset that I no longer spent time with them and called me boring. I outgrew them. Story 29. One of my friends found Jesus late in life after spending years mocking religion and engaging in many vices, but he said he lost respect for me when I got divorced. Goodbye. Story 30. So, for the record, I am naive and tend to give people the benefit of the doubt long past the time when they no longer deserve it. I have no ability to sense danger. You get the picture. My husband at the time was similar. We made a lot of regrettable friends in our day. A friend of mine, a coworker at the military museum where I worked, invited my husband to do Civil War reenactment. After he did it a few times, he told me how fun it was, how there were a couple of other camp wives I could hang out with, and the thing that really convinced me, I would get to sew myself a bunch of costumes. They were really pretty ones, too, some of my best work. I still have them because I can't bear to give them away. Before you ask, no, we were not on the right side of history. But somebody has to play the bad guys for it to be fun, right? We were having fun. After the battles, we were drinking and telling stories around a campfire. Then Barack Obama was chosen as the Democratic candidate. That first reenactment after that happened, our captain, who had banned modern politics at camp, was camping at a different spot due to Civil War reenactment politics that I no longer remember. At our camp, all hell broke loose. I swear none of these people had ever spoken this way before or given me any clue. It was the most racist display I had ever seen in my life. Someone literally called my ex a racial slur lover, meant in the nastiest possible way because of how he planned to vote. I wanted to leave right then, but we were both too drunk to drive. We went to our tent and packed up. We left as soon as it was daylight. Later, at work, my coworker, the aforementioned captain, was trying to convince me to keep coming. He literally said, it's not illegal to be racist. I told him, it's also not illegal for me to not associate with racists. Another one of my friends, who actually has the ability to sense danger, had a field day with the I told you so S. She said, who could have guessed that people pretending to be Confederate soldiers might be racists? Several friends came to me and said they had really been worried about me during that time and were glad I was out of it. Oof. I think I still give people too much benefit of the doubt and am still too oblivious when people leave clues about who they really are. I'll probably figure it all out a day or two before I die at this rate. Story 31. When I realized I was the group therapist, rideshare driver, and occasional wallet, but no one ever remembered my birthday. Story 32. My wife's friend had a key to our house. They had been friends since childhood, and she was always around, so we trusted her. Then she started seeing a married man. I did not agree with her on that, but it was her life. Later, she admitted to having sex with him in our living room on multiple occasions while we were out. I'm sorry, but our house is not a place for her affair. I was absolutely livid. We took back the key and cut her out of our lives. Last I heard, she had a child by him and he was still with his wife. Story 33. When he started smoking methamphetamine, best friends since kindergarten or not, I could not have that in my life. I reached out once or twice offering to help, but never received anything worth responding to. Story 34. When I left to get sober and came back to peer pressure as if I were in high school again. I am in my 30s. Story 35. Providing information about my activities to my ex-husband during our separation period. I am not here to entertain you. If he is genuinely curious about me, he can ask me directly. Story 36. When they consistently made plans for dinner, parties, or trips without me. One of these women, someone I considered a lifelong best friend, rarely reached out unless she needed me to talk her through another crisis of her own making. The other two were more her friends than mine, but we had all known each other and seemed to be part of the same group for decades. I am ashamed to say it took me until my late 30s to finally see that these people never really liked me for who I am and that my best friend treated me like an afterthought for most of our friendship. Story 37. I went to hang out with them and casually asked if they wanted to grab lunch. No one said anything, so I shrugged and went outside to hang out with another friend. Later, they came out and had apparently eaten in the meantime. I asked them why they didn't include me, and they said I should have said something earlier. It made me realize they didn't care if I was there or not. I was just a fixture, not someone they actually cared about. I haven't talked to any of them in a decade. Story 38. When they never actually initiated conversation, and once I stopped, we never spoke again. Also, when they reply to everyone else but you. Story 39. I've got a few, but here's one. I was going through a tough time. I had been going through a breakup and was in my hometown for my birthday. By this point, most of my friends had also moved away. My mom wanted to have family over, which I was not looking forward to because I really don't like a lot of attention on me. The only friend I had in town was someone I had known since I was maybe 13, so I asked him if he wanted to go. He said he would be glad to. I gave him the address and was relieved that I would have at least one friend there. On the day of, I asked when he would be there. He didn't respond. He never showed up, and I haven't seen or talked to him since. He's alive, and that is literally all I know about him. Story 40. My friend received a kiss on the cheek at a Las Vegas nightclub from Wiz Khalifa, and she transformed into a narcissistic person. I do not know what power that man has, but it needs to be regulated. I could not believe it. She went from being a straight-laced accountant to dancing with R&B stars, saying we are not good enough anymore. All because of a peck on the cheek during a work trip night gone wild. Story 41. One person said I was not a productive member of society because I disagreed with his racist immigration views. Story 42. He was going further and further down a Jordan Peterson, men's rights, white men are the most persecuted people on earth rabbit hole. He married a foreigner, then divorced, and became anti-immigrant. It was just no fun anymore. Story 43. There was a clear hierarchy between them based on family income, and none of them behaved normally around black people. Story 44. I started concentrating on my career, and every time I returned to them, it felt like I was just wasting time rather than having fun. Story 45. They faked a suicide attempt. Basically, they said they were going to do it, and when I reached out to their parents to let them know, my friend called back and flipped out that I did that and said they were only kidding. I dropped them on the spot and never talked to them since. Story 46. Make America Great Again and conspiracy falsehoods all the time made them impossible to respect. It is sad because I do not have a lot of friends anymore. Story 47. While we were working hard, I used the phrase, "Those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones," and they started laughing at me. A few asked, "What does that mean?" Then another answered, "It is one of his little sayings." At that moment, I knew I needed new friends. Story 48. Slight twist on the theme, but when I broke my back, most of the people in my social circles just dropped me. My social group consisted of about 100 people, but only 4 came to see me while I was in the intensive care unit. Through months of rehabilitation and another major surgery, those 4 were the ones I could call to ask them to come to my place and relax for a bit. Now, those people are the only ones who can call me anytime, and I will come through for them. The people who help you when you are struggling are the only friends that matter. The saying, "everyone is your brother until the rent is due," really hits hard when you see people who won't even give you an hour while you are injured in the hospital, or give you a ride because you can't drive yet due to pain causing you to black out every so often. Story 49. When I told them the story of my in vitro fertilization journey that still did not give us a baby, how expensive and painful it was, their reply was, "That's okay because, according to the Catholic Church and priest, undergoing in vitro fertilization is a sin. How can you tell that to someone who went through hell to conceive?" When confronted about how hurtful they were, they doubled down and said, "What if I am just sharing my opinion?" No, nothing like Christian love to show how much hate some people have. Story 50. People trying to convert me. I get it, you are religious, but you do you. Keep me out of your decisions. Story 51. One person upset my ex, and another supported Make America Great Again, and would delete my replies to their nonsense despite claiming to be open-minded. Story 52. They encouraged my drinking and drug use because it made me funny. We lost a friend to drinking and driving, and instead of discouraging them from substance abuse, it got worse. They blacked out every time they drank, cheated on partners, became close with predatory people while falsely accusing others of predatory behavior, engaged in constant fighting, and reacted with extreme aggression. I knew I had to leave when the friendship made me feel like I was in a hostage situation. Story 53. When the girl I was seeing and a friend were sexually assaulted by one of their friends, they said, he was high, so he couldn't help it. After he did it. Story 54. When they routinely put me down over my achievements, later confessing they expected me to be a failure, and that my hard-earned success was totally random, they said to me, by all means, I should be the successful one. You lose friends when some of them can no longer find a way to feel superior to you. That particular person only kept friends around whom she could feel like a savior for. She was identified as gifted, young, very beautiful, and had a trust fund. I am from generational poverty, a minority without a high school certificate, and I am estranged from my parents for my own safety. I only saw this cruel side of her when she couldn't feel sorry for me anymore. Story 55. The moment I realized they only called when they needed something. Phone is dead? Call me. Need a ride at 3 a.m.? Call me. Having relationship problems? Call me. But when I needed someone to talk to after my father passed away, there was silence for weeks. Story 56. I was really depressed and withdrawn. I apologized for being absent and explained that I was struggling. They thought I was just being difficult and said they did not know what they had done wrong. It was never about them. Story 57. When they all became supporters of the Make America Great Again movement. I earned my degrees and saw the world. They avoided that kind of hard work and retreated from everything outside our hometown. I created my own opportunities while they became bitter and angry. So we really did not have that much in common anymore. It is unfortunate, but what can you do? Story 58. I thought a few old friends were just conservatives, somewhat misguided for supporting Donald Trump, but I had known some of these guys since high school. Then a man with a swastika tattoo started hanging around, and the group split between those who accepted it and those who refused to associate with a Nazi. Story 59. I asked her to watch my guinea pigs while I was out of town for 3 days. When I came home, they had no food or water. I only think they were still alive because I had double filled their hay in their enclosure before I left. However, I knew she had been there because my toilet was covered in vomit. Story 60. When I stopped drinking, I realized all the friend group did was drink and party together. I was not uninvited or anything, but being around a bunch of intoxicated people when you are sober is not fun. Story 61. Sitting in my best friend's hotel room, which I had booked for her at midnight, knowing I had to get up at 4 a.m. the next day. She cried and screamed at me that neither I nor anyone we were traveling with, who were also in the room or lying in bed with her throughout the day and night so someone could always take care of her, cared about her. This was after I had just walked through the rain in a strange city at night to get her dinner because she was in too much pain to get out of bed. She said I didn't care about her happiness and well-being, and that she should just jump off the roof or kill herself because I didn't stop what I was doing at the event she invited me to in order to run back to the hotel every 5 minutes to update her about what was going on at the event so she could feel like she was there, even though she wasn't getting out of bed and had multiple people in her room helping care for her. I gave up. I finished the weekend event, got her in the car with friends driving back, and waited for an apology. It has been almost 3 years. She keeps asking if I want to hang out or complaining that she is burnt out, and I just don't have it in me to care anymore. Story 62. Being a starving 20-year-old well into their 60s. I get it. You can be young, couch surf, work temporary jobs, and enjoy a wild life when you are in your 20s. It's cool. You should have some fun. But if you never outgrow that, you are just a vagrant. I cannot let you into my house because I am afraid you will never leave. Story 63. When I was invited to a party by a different group and everyone there treated me with respect and kindness, it made me think, oh, this is what it should feel like to have friends. I never went back to my old friends, and I have been happier and more well-rounded since. Story 64. Just one person said, I believe America is in the middle of a crisis of masculinity in an alternative right kind of context. My wife and I are expecting a daughter later this year. I cannot have someone bringing that energy around my future child. Story 65. I noticed early signs of crab mentality, but I ignored them until it got worse. I had to slowly detach myself from those people. Story 66. When my friend insisted that I must use he/him pronouns in real life because I have a masculine vibe even though I am a girl. Story 67. When in a group chat, they were joking about expelling French Canadians like me, similar to what happened in the past with Acadians, some of whom ended up in Louisiana. Instead, they suggested placing them into reservations like Native Canadians, which I am. Story 68. When I realized I had to choose between the loud, self-involved, always complaining friend and all the other people I wanted to be friends with who could not tolerate him for a variety of good reasons, I understood. I had been so blind to it because I did not have many friends, but it is so obvious looking back. Story 69. Many years ago, a 19-year-old friend was scrounging up cash so his 13-year-old girlfriend could get an abortion. I am out. Story 70. During the summer of Black Lives Matter protests, in a group text with a few friends, one friend said something along the lines of, "They need to prove they belong here, and burning our cities down is not doing that," referring to black people. I never realized how racist some of them were. I blocked most of that group chat that day and have not spoken to them since. Story 71. COVID-19 exposed some of my friends and family's gullibility, ignorance, and even spitefulness. I cannot look at them the same way anymore. Story 72. They were all loyal followers of one toxic person whom they worshipped because they received many privileges and always seemed to support him. It took me a while to understand why they did not challenge his nonsense and were even hostile towards me whenever I did. Story 73. Supported the invasion of Ukraine and has untreated mental health issues. It was difficult because we have a long history. Story 74. When joking and teasing gradually became constant demeaning snide remarks, we had a blow-up over something unrelated, which was also an issue. After 3 days of not speaking, I realized how much better my life was without her around. Story 75. Telling me everyone who died of coronavirus died because it was God's will after a coronavirus death in my family. Her husband's grandmother must have been glad to die because she was so lonely. Story 76. They were incredibly selfish and took advantage of my kindness a lot. I realized that I needed to have respect for myself, so I dropped them. It seems like they have not changed either, which is really sad to be honest. But it is not my problem, so I keep moving forward. Story 77. Genuinely believing that the Large Hadron Collider split us into a bad-end alternate reality, and that is the reason COVID-19 happened. It makes me really sad because I had not spoken to those friends in a couple of years. But when I heard the deep end they went off, I ended the remaining contact. Story 78. My best friend was incarcerated in 2005 and sentenced to 27 years. He was released on parole in 2021, partially due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We reconnected immediately, but he had not changed while I had a family and a career. Soon, he began asking me for money, and I gave it to him because I love him, wish him well, and understand he lost 16 years and was struggling. However, he could not be helped. The last time I spoke to him, he was trying to hide guns at my house, and I refused. I still love him, but I love my family more and cannot put them or myself in danger. Story 79. When she started to become extremely religious and decided to believe in a book and a God that my rapist used to justify his actions, I could not accept that in my life. Story 80. After my divorce, I decided to celebrate my renewed freedom by living a more active life. I started going to the beach, parties, art exhibitions, museums, and concerts much more often than before. I began reading more books, exercising more, traveling more, attending seminars, and even considered going back to university. None of my friends joined me in these activities. They preferred to stay on the couch and watch television or the internet. Very soon, we ran out of things to talk about. Story 81. They started drama with my closest friend and family on nights out, making good people intensely upset and uncomfortable. There are only so many next morning apologies I could take. It kept happening. Story 82. When I was done being their emotional punching bag, especially when they were drunk, I was also tired of always hearing about them, the money they make, and just how awesome they were. They were total narcissists and liars. Story 83. when they never invited me to anything but suddenly acted like I had betrayed them when I finally met a woman who liked me, and I would rather spend time with her than any of them. Story 84. When I was in high school, people from the military gave us lectures about military service because it is a conscription-based service where I live, Israel. From the very beginning, I asked if there was a path for those who did not want to be drafted. All my friends started a campaign to pressure me into joining the military. The campaign included guilt tripping. We are going to fight and die while you sip on a latte in a cafe. False claims. You do realize that if you do not do military service, you are not a real citizen and must be deported. This felt like bullying because they were my friends. Threatening our friendship. Don't make me regret being your friend all these years. Do your part, soldier. Don't leave me to die alone on the battlefield. The result was that I was manipulated into thinking I had no choice but to be drafted. On the day I was about to board the bus, I had the biggest panic attack of my life and begged to get out of there. Ever since then, I started therapy because I was not aware of how much I had been abused back then, not just by my friends, but that is a different story. After that, I volunteered for community service, the alternative to military conscription that gives you the same benefits as military service. Story 85. I have children who are still unmarried or do not have children of their own. They only ever wanted to do activities where I could not bring my kids along. I understand not always wanting to participate in child-friendly outings, but it was the opposite. They always wanted me to hire a babysitter. First, you are asking for a financial and scheduling commitment from me every time we hang out, which is difficult. Second, these children are my priority. If I have to choose between you or them. Story 86. We had a college classmate who had a large social media following. Years ago, this classmate made a series of blog posts about her infertility journey and multiple miscarriages. My former friend group talked negatively about her, saying she was doing it all for attention and sympathy. I transferred into the college and was not familiar with this girl or her husband, so I never had any opinions of them either way. I did think it was impressive that some of our peers were so successful. Those girls were always unpleasant, but that was the last straw for me. I removed them from my life immediately. It was very upsetting. Story 87. Guys snorting drugs at a fraternity party, then trying to start fights while I just wanted to hang out, drink beer from the keg, and talk to girls. Story 88. They came over to hang out for Independence Day but just smoked marijuana on the edges of our yard and left while I was putting the baby to sleep. Story 89. My best friend was ghosting me when I asked for support while my dog was dying of cancer. Then the majority of our friends thought I was overreacting for not wanting to be her friend anymore. I deserve better friends and people who are truly in my corner during the good times and the bad. I'd rather have fewer friends of higher quality. It was one of the hardest lessons of my life. More than 20 years of friendships destroyed. Story 90. When I started seeing them prioritizing getting high over everything else, they messed up jobs, passed on full-ride scholarships to school, and just stopped doing anything. The final straw was when I went to a friend's house, and it was a straight trap house, not extreme but on the way. I realized that if I wanted to achieve anything in life, I couldn't get sucked in and follow them down their path. That realization was fully confirmed while sitting at a friend's funeral, seeing how few of the rest of the group showed up. Story 91. We're still friends for the most part because they are working on it, but I have taken a huge step back since this. I realized how much joy they get from abusing whatever power they have, and that it has been a pattern for as long as I have known them. I was just blind to it. Do you really expect me to congratulate you for threatening to destroy a contract for a small business because they did not respond to your coworker who did not follow up on the single email she sent during a major hurricane? Come on. Story 92. Constant drama. One was a narcissist who kicked me out of her car twice. The second time was my breaking point, though it should have been years earlier. The other, well, the guy I was dating's house was on my way to work. Her car was parked in front of it at 6:30 a.m. Months later, when things calmed down and apologies were made, I realized how much easier my life was without both of them. With friends who just wanted to support me, not knock me down a peg. No digs about my life choices. No constant worry that I would say or do something wrong. No desperately trying to get closer and be better friends. With my other friends, it was just easy and supportive. So I kept my distance even after I had forgiven them. Story 93. When they demonstrated to me that they never cared as much as I did, all the red flags that I had ignored came flooding back. Story 94. I saw the same people every weekend at parties and shows, but I realized that I had never had a real conversation with any of them. It was all so shallow. Story 95. My friend, who I used to go to bars with and was very close to, got intoxicated and went to a man's house with a gun because the man insulted his ex-girlfriend. I haven't seen that man the same way since. I have been sober for 1 year now. Life has changed. I still struggle, but at least I am not worried about going to jail or dying. Story 96. When we met their other friends, they were some of the most awful people I had ever met. I had a friend from work, and we became close quickly. I considered her a really good friend, nearly best friend level after 2 years. My husband and I went out with her husband, and their friends who had stayed close since university. We went out for St. Patrick's Day, and she, her husband, and their friends were incredibly awful to the servers. They thought it was funny and behaved like they were the life of the party. They made one waitress cry, then tried to avoid paying the bill because something they ordered wasn't what they expected. They did not tip, even though we were a large table and had been there for hours. It was embarrassing to be associated with them. My husband and I stayed behind to apologize and tip the waitress. We decided we were better off without those friends in the future. I remember one of the men being especially awful and clearly thinking he was funny. He was a new lawyer, recently hired by his father's firm. He gave the waitress a hard time, as if he were a pickup artist trying to insult her subtly. My friend turned to me and said, "Isn't he so great? I'm glad you finally get to meet them all." I did not think these men were funny. Story 97. We were meant to hang out just the core group. There was an additional person that 2/3 of the people were involved with. Meanwhile, the other 1/3 really couldn't handle being around that person. This was meant to be a day without that person so we could all relax. The core group had been friends for over a decade, whereas the additional person was just an occasional group partner of less than a year. About 2 hours before meeting up, I got a text from the central friend, the person who originally brought us all together many years ago, saying that the partner was actually going to come after all. I simply said, "Okay then. I think I'll sit this one out. Have fun, see you all next time." The vitriol I received in response was vile, strange, and inappropriate. I was told I ruined my friend's whole weekend. How dare I be so selfish? How could I dislike this person? Along with a lot of name-calling. I didn't respond immediately, just let it sit for a couple of days. Finally, I sent a calm message to my central friend and explained that I loved her but wasn't going to be abused like that, so I was taking a step back from the friendship for my own mental health. She became even more hateful and spoke negatively about me quite a bit. I just muted her and never looked back. I lost the entire friend group because they all kept doing toxic, strange things to each other in escalating ways. Most of the couples that were married in the group are now divorced. There are many unacknowledged children from the whole group, and genuinely, I couldn't be happier to be very far away from those people. Story 98. I had an online friend I met 25 years ago. He was a good friend, but the one thing that always bothered me was that he would always try to one-up anything I did. It was usually small things like I got an item in a game, but he got something way better and would have to rub it in. It grated on my nerves, but he was a great friend otherwise. He liked to code and was really good at it. He did it a lot in his free time. Fast forward to about 3 years ago. He never had a job and never graduated high school, which I didn't care about. I never judged him for it. I would always talk about how horrible my days were working at a certain retail store that was pure hell. I told him about all the difficult things I had to deal with from customers while being paid so little. One day, his friend got him a job in information technology, working directly under him. He went on about how much money he was going to make. He asked for $25,000, and the company offered him $38,000 per year with no experience, with the possibility of making $60,000 to $80,000 when he learned more about what they did. I was happy for him while a little jealous. I was supportive until he kept rubbing it in my face. Now all he talks about is money. He spent $300 on a donut maker here and $200 on jerky there. He constantly rubbed it in my face, even though he didn't truly earn that job. Needless to say, that hurt a lot. He doesn't realize many people have college degrees and are working at fast food restaurants because positions aren't available, and he was lucky to have his friend get him that job as his first job. I cut him off. I haven't really spoken to him in a few years except the occasional happy birthday or Merry Christmas. It just became too toxic a friendship. Story 99. Went full fascist, fully supported Make America Great Again and Donald Trump, became obsessed with conspiracy theories. Not even an American. Story 100. COVID-19. I never realized how many people had a propensity for conspiracy theories. From the Great Reset to the belief that they are living in a communist country. I have known you for 45 years. You have not had a good idea since middle school, and now you are researching vaccine efficacy. Story 101. A friend started becoming a crazy COVID-19 denier, as in Bill Gates is doing this to plant chips in you and activate them through 5G. They were sharing the most idiotic conspiracy theories. After trying to talk sense to them, seemingly successfully, until whatever sources they were listening to hijacked their brain again, I just blocked them on all social media and told them to get in touch when they are back to reality. I have not spoken to them since 2020. Story 102. They were neckbeard in cell types in high school, and I moved there in 8th grade as someone who played a lot of video games. That was the overlap. I had a few girlfriends in high school, was in chorus, and most of my friends were girls. They did not and were not on all counts. They gave me a hard time and hated women, but I had no other friends and we played games together. After high school, I went to college and met my future wife. They did nothing except criticize me for going to college, acting like I had sold out. I wanted to travel and do things in addition to the gaming binges, which I never stopped doing. They did not even like going to the local convenience store. They hated being in public. Those losers. Story 103. I was the main person trying to keep in touch. About 8 years ago, I decided to stop contacting her. We spoke for the first time 3 weeks ago when she contacted me to find out something about herself. I felt sad all over again because it was a truly meaningful relationship to me, but I got over it in 2 or 3 days. I am happy with those who put in the same effort I do. Story 104. Well, my old best friend forever was my roommate, which was mistake number 1. My girlfriend got pregnant, and I confided in him before anyone else. He didn't ask how I was, if I was excited, or scared. I was also scared, nothing. He just said, "Do you need money for an abortion?" He watched me go through a lot and knew I wanted to be a dad. I was in my mid-30s, so not a young dad, and this was an exciting thing for me. This was just the beginning. He didn't like my now wife and decided his disdain for her was greater than our friendship of more than 20 years. Story 105. These people are what I would call clout chasers in the art scene. Once I stopped really using Instagram and Twitter, going to events, and posting as much art, I kind of just make it for myself now rather than for validation. They stopped caring about me and would choose cooler people to hang out with. It especially hurt when they would choose people who have mistreated me, but I am just letting it all go, to be honest. I do miss being more popular sometimes, but I am almost 30 and the whole social scene is really annoying. I honestly just want real friends. Story 106. They played neutrality when my ex-wife had an affair and tried to ruin my life after separation. Nobody likes a fence-sitter. Actively cut out those people who were just fine with her behavior. Story 107. When they would not stop trying to recruit me into their magic crystal community, insisting that if I started attending their rituals and buying pieces of quartz marked up 20,000%, all my problems would be solved. I went to one to humor them, which was a mistake because they really increased the pressure once they thought I was involved. Story 108. My friends said that girls who complain about unsolicited explicit photos are what is wrong with the new generation, expressed in different terms. The situation was very upsetting, and they objected to my objection. Story 109. I had to quit using drugs. They are not bad people, just addicted, and I was going to die if I did not stop. I did stop. Now I am friends with some of them again, and they are sober too. Story 110. They are very friendly and nice in one-on-one interactions but make me the butt of jokes in group settings. I have not cut them off but have distanced myself and tried to cultivate new fulfilling friendships. Story 111. He defended and justified his friend's crimes. There is a difference between supporting a friend who did something wrong and saying what they did was not really that bad because it was just pictures. I regret being cordial during the rest of that conversation. Story 112. Let me start by saying that I know how hard dealing with mental health can be. My childhood friend and I reconnected over a Dungeons and Dragons campaign with my fiancé and brother, and it was very fun. The campaign ended due to real-life issues, but I stayed in better contact with my friend. A couple of years later, we were talking on the phone. He told me his home life was really difficult at the moment, so I offered my couch for a week. I thought it would be a sleepover with beer and video games, but I was wrong. It turned out he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and was off his medications. The first few days were calm, then I realized the severity of his condition. I finally told him he had to leave after about 8 days. He was not happy, but he was not aggressive or mean. A few weeks later, he showed up at my apartment at around 4 in the morning and fell asleep on my front steps. I woke him up and asked if everything was okay because he lived 3 towns away and did not own a car. Apparently, he had walked about 30 miles because he believed I told him I had won the lottery and needed him to come over immediately. I called into work and gave him a ride home, and I informed his father about the situation. He was still living with his dad. I told my fiancée what had happened, and she was very upset. A couple of weeks later, she called me and said she saw him behind the apartment dumpster smoking a cigarette. I believed her because he was wearing a brightly colored hoodie that no one else would wear. I told him not to do that again because it was upsetting my fiancée and that he needed to take his medications before reaching out again. About 2 years later, he called me from a subway station in New York, claiming that we were Russian spies and that he was on his way to meet with Vladimir Putin. On the same day, after coming home from work exhausted and sweaty and taking a shower, I heard a loud knock on the door. It was the police asking if I knew this person. He had given them a fake name. They told me he warned them that I might need medical attention because if I was activated, I would have a seizure and die. At the time, I was on probation, so seeing the police scared me and made me angry. I called his mother, who was aware of his mental health crisis. She told me he had access to his medications but just refused to take them. Josh, wherever you are, I hope you are okay and alive. I miss you, my friend. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.